Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are diving into a really radical new theory of the mind. It's called the brain kinematics model. And get this, it suggests that almost everything we think we know about thinking might be wrong. So let's just jump right in with the question that's really at the heart of this whole thing. What if your thoughts weren't like bits of data in a computer? What if they were actual physical waves rippling through the very tissue of your brain? And that's the core proposal right there. This theory reimagines the brain not as this cold, hard computer made of wires and circuits, but as a living, physical medium. Think of it like a substance where thoughts are generated by real, physical interactions, almost like ripples spreading across a pond. It's a totally different way to look at it.
All right, so Section 1, a new brain model. To really get our heads around this, we need to look at the two fundamental ingredients that, according to this model, create our entire reality, from one moment to the next.
Okay, so the first ingredient, it's something the model calls strain carrier waves. The best way to picture these is as fast-moving waves of energy, just flowing through your brain tissue. And these waves, they're carrying the physical pattern of everything you're sensing and feeling right now. Next up, waves versus memory patterns. Now, these real-time waves, they're not just traveling through an empty space, right? They're actually flowing through a kind of landscape. And that landscape is shaped by the second crucial element of thought.
And that second element is what's called memory motifs. These are the stable, physically stored patterns of your entire past. You can kind of think of them as the hardened riverbeds of your mind, you know? They've been shaped by a whole lifetime of experience. And what's really interesting is that the theory suggests these are stored in these incredibly complex, repeating fractal structures.
So this brings us to this really beautiful collision of forces. On one side, you've got the dynamic, always changing waves of the present moment. And on the other, you've got the stable, deeply ingrained structures of your past. The whole model argues that your entire conscious experience, everything you feel, is born right at the interface where these two things meet. It's pretty amazing to think about. Okay, Section 3, how friction creates meaning. So, how in the world do these waves and these patterns create something as complex as a feeling or an idea or a memory? Well, the answer this model gives is surprisingly simple. It's just one word: friction.
And it's a beautifully simple process when you break it down. Step 1, a new wave of information comes in. Step 2, it bumps up against your stored memory patterns. And then Step 3, the friction between them, the places where the new thing doesn't quite match the old thing, that's what actually creates perception itself. Wild, right?
This quote really just nails the core idea. It says, meaning is born in the friction between what is happening now and what we already know. So we're not just passively receiving information, our brain is actively constructing our reality by constantly comparing the now to the known. That friction isn't some kind of error or noise in the system, it's the whole point. It is the feature that creates meaning. All right, let's move on. Section 4, the memory of pain. This is where it gets really interesting, because we're going to apply this model to a powerful, real-world example, something pretty much all of us have experienced: pain. You see, this model could change everything about how we understand pain. The theory proposes that pain isn't just some simple signal sent from an injury up to your brain. No. Instead, pain is a perception that is actively constructed in the brain using this exact same process of wave friction we've been talking about. And this leads to a really crucial distinction between acute pain and chronic pain. Acute pain, that's the real-time friction. It's a wave of sensation that mismatches your brain's stored pattern of what a healthy body should feel like. But chronic pain, well, that's something else entirely. The model argues it's actually a memorized pain pattern, a waveform that literally gets recorded and then stuck on a loop. And this isn't just some abstract idea either. The model actually points to a specific loop in the brain, involving key regions like S1, S2, the ACC, and the insula, where this pain pattern becomes physically embedded as a memory motif. This could explain why, so tragically, pain can persist long after an injury is healed. The brain isn't getting a new signal, it's literally replaying the memory of pain. Okay, moving on to Section 5, building thoughts from waves. So the model gives us this really compelling explanation for a physical feeling, right, like pain. But can it really scale up? Can it explain something as abstract as a thought or an idea?
Remarkably, the model says yes. The very same principle, waves creating friction with existing patterns, is believed to be the engine behind even our most abstract thoughts.
So how would that even work? Well, instead of just one simple wave, imagine multiple waves of sensation all intersecting at once. They'd create these complex, almost geometric interference patterns. The model calls them lattices. Your brain then learns to recognize these lattices as symbols. You know, the pattern for chair or the pattern for the sound of your own name. And when these new symbolic patterns resonate with your stored memories, that's when higher-order abstract concepts start to emerge. And that brings us to our final section, consciousness as a flow. This is where we get to the most profound, the most mind-blowing implication of this entire model, its explanation for consciousness itself.
So, to explain consciousness, the theory introduces one final, pretty wild concept: phase waves. Okay, so think of these as a totally special kind of wave. Unlike the physical strain waves we've been talking about, these supposedly don't carry energy. They carry pure information, pure meaning.
And here is the most mind-bending part of the whole thing. Because these phase waves carry information and not energy, the theory posits that they aren't bound by normal physical speed limits. We're talking not even the speed of light. Now, if that's true, it could be a physical explanation for that subjective feeling we all have of instantaneous thought. You know, how an idea can just pop into your mind, fully formed. This provides what the model calls the freedom property that seems essential to our conscious experience. It's a potential physical reason for why our minds seem to move faster than the physical world, and it could even explain why our dreams can completely defy the laws of physics. It's because the information itself, the phase wave, isn't bound by those laws. So, let's end on this final, pretty provocative thought. If consciousness is this flow of interacting waves, what does that mean it is to be you? If you aren't some static thing, but you're actually the sum total of these flowing waves constantly interacting with the patterns of your past, who are you? It suggests that the self isn't an object at all, but a process, a continuous, an ever-changing wave.